Hey everyone, welcome back to Thriving in Ambiguity, the podcast where we take on the complexities of technology and innovation, transforming the unknown into opportunities for growth. I'm your host, Steve Mancini, and I'm thrilled to have you here for episode 2 of the mini-series on Alletra MP storage. In episode 1, we explored the foundational elements of the Alletra MP platform, its disaggregated architecture, all-active design, and the ability to scale compute capacity independently. We also touched on 100% data availability guarantee and how it's redefining storage management for modern enterprises. Today, we're diving deeper into the software innovations that power Alletra MP, making it one of the most advanced storage platforms in the industry. We'll cover critical features like deduplication and compression, replication and peer persistence, intent-based provisioning with AI, and some game-changing tools in the Data Services Cloud Console, including virtual lock and virtual copy snapshots. I want to start with a quick reminder. HPE Alletra MP is a modular container-based software-defined solution running on hardware. This design allows customers to deploy it on-premise, as an appliance, or in the public cloud as a service. The platform ships with an all-inclusive system software license covering all the features I just mentioned, and then some. And one big advantage is that new capabilities will be automatically added to your subscription. So you get performance and features without any additional upcharges. It's a CapEx-friendly system where everything you need is included. There's no hidden fees and no surprise add-ons, which I love. Now, there is one exception, that there is a $1 charge to enable data encryption. And that's simply because in some countries, you're not allowed to include encryption without a fee. So in order to make that simple, we charge $1 for it. That's the only kind of gotcha out there. It's like, hey, what is this $1 charge for encryption? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So yes, okay. But because Alletra MP ships fully loaded, it delivers the essential capabilities enterprises need right out the box. Plus, everything is fully managed through the Data Services Cloud Console. Now, we do call that DSCC for short. So if you hear one or the other, that's where I'm going with that. And it is a SaaS platform that offers a centralized cloud-based management experience. Doesn't have to be, but that's the best way to utilize it. We can run the system, basically on-prem where it's basically self-enclosed. So if you have restrictions there, we can meet that. But ideally, we really want to run it as a SaaS application where you have that cloud-like experience like you would get with public cloud. That's what we're aiming for here. With that out of the way, let's jump into these software features. Let's start with deduplication and compression. Two must-have features that maximize storage efficiency and lower cost. These technologies have evolved to the point where vendors, HPE included, confidently provide data reduction guarantees. And in HPE's case, it's a 4-to-1 data efficiency guarantee for block workloads. Deduplication eliminates redundant data by storing only one instance of duplicate blocks. For example, if you have virtual machines sharing the same operating system, this is about as easy as it comes. And you may have multiple virtual machines on a system. Well, the operating system is 99% the same. So it's not going to keep for every virtual machine a copy of that. That doesn't make sense because all of the data is the same. So it's only going to keep a copy of the blocks that are different. So it'll keep one of each. And then after that, it's just changes. Okay, does that make sense? Compression, on the other hand, further reduces the size of data blocks. And that just comes down to how they're optimized and stored on the physical media. So between the two, that's really where you get what we call compaction. Okay, so if you hear compaction, that's what they're talking about. Dedupe and compression together. Now, thanks to these technologies, you no longer need to over-provision storage. However, if you don't fully trust the guarantee, then you're force buying more capacity than you'll ever use. I mean, that's the reality. And this happens all the time. People are still not totally locked in on trusting that guarantee, trusting deduplication and compression. They've always kind of gone on usable capacity, and we'll talk about that in a second. And because of that, they end up overbuying. Okay, and in many cases, unless you have an environment where you're constantly growing, typically that those resources sit there for years, and in most cases they're never used, and it's just a waste of money that could have been put towards something else. So to avoid overspending, it's critical to understand how these capacity measurements work. Okay, so number one, raw capacity. This is the total storage before formatting, system overhead, and data reduction. Essentially, this is how many disks your system starts with. So, on a base level Alletra MP, you may see that system come with 8 disks. Okay, so everybody's a little bit different, but that is the raw capacity. Basically, how many disks your storage appliance ships with. Now, a quick tip. It's good to understand how capacity can be added here because everybody's underlying technology is different. I can tell you that from experience. I worked at both Dell and now HPE. I've looked at what Pure does. I've looked at what NetApp does. Everybody does this differently. So it's a really good idea to ask, how do I scale my infrastructure? And so when you ask that question, you're going to find, different answers. Some vendors are going to say you can add one disk at a time. In HPE's case, it's 2 disks at a time. But in some system, it's disk packs. Okay? Can't do 1 or 2. You got to do like 7 or more. Okay? And if you think about that, these disks are not cheap. So if you only need a few terabytes of space, maybe you're running a little bit low, well, it'd be really nice to add that 1 or 2 disks, okay? If you got to, buy a whole shelf, that's a problem. That can get real expensive real quick, and you might not be ready for that, which is one of the reasons people buy all this stuff, because they don't want to take the risk there. But I'm telling you, as long as it scales easily, the 1 or 2 disk increments, that's a pretty safe place to be. Okay. Second is usable capacity. We're talking about storage after accounting for system overhead, RAID, and sparing. This is where historically customers purchase storage based on usable capacity, because older and less advanced systems offered limited dedupe and compression, and everybody had varying approaches to data protection schemes, and because of that, it often made a big difference in how systems were compared. There could be huge differences in how one company, if you just went by, let's say, how many disks were in the system, based on how they were striping, what level of mirroring or what RAID policy they're using, it could be massively different in what that array looks like and what it costs. So, like I said, that's typically where people default to. My recommendation, number 3 on the list, is effective capacity. This is the capacity available after dedupe and compression and thin provisioning. So in today's market, effective capacity is really what matters. And since the vendor's approach to data reduction can differ, just pay attention, because this is really, you want to make sure you get apples to apples. So you're evaluating, as close to possible what one system does compared to another. So when you're evaluating storage based on effective capacity, hold the vendors accountable to their guarantees. If the vendor's going to say, hey, we do 4-to-1 and we promise, and here's the guarantee and here's what it looks like, hold them to it. Okay? Which leads to the question, can I actually trust the guarantee? So HPE's data reduction approach helps you right-size your environment and avoid the overbuying. This allows you to maximize your cost savings. because their guarantee is backed by real world accountability, like this isn't made up, right? I mean, this is using all the analytics that they have, which says for block workloads, we can actually hit this and there's no surprises. They're real confident in that. So, honestly, you could be confident in that. And like I said, I worked at both Dell and HPE, and I have seen situations where a customer did not, for one reason or another, get the 4-to-1 guarantee. And in that case, it was honored. It was very simple. Customer, basically opened up a ticket, said, "Hey, I'm not getting the reduction that I need." And we took a look at it. You dive in, and it says, "Okay, this is simple. Send the customer 2 more disks. Let's write the environment, and problem solved." That's it. I mean, so it's not a major inconvenience for a vendor. If they don't live up to it, they'll just send you more disks and you'll be all good. So it's not like we're going to come back to you and say, "Hey, no, you did something wrong here," and then you're gonna have to pay $50,000 more dollars. You're gonna have to buy a new array. We don't need to do that anymore. So be confident, and you should be in a pretty good spot. Next up, replication. Now, this is crucial for backup and disaster recovery. So, Alletra supports a couple different forms of replication. They have synchronous replication for zero RPO, recovery point objectives. They have asynchronous for periodic replication. So, if you have a situation where maybe you have 2 different data centers, but the pipe in between isn't fast enough or isn't consistent enough or is really far away, you may have to use it asynchronous where it sends data at intervals, and so you always maintain a backup, but it's not a like for like copy all the time. There's a delay there. So either synchronous or asynchronous. Now, the real standout one here is something called peer persistence. And peer persistence allows you to create a fully active setup across 2 locations. This allows seamless failover between sites without downtime or any intervention. This is especially useful in VMware environments where virtual machines continue running transparently during a site failure. Whether you're running a clustered app or a single server workload, peer persistence keeps everything operational. And honestly, one of the really cool features here is it's not site A to site B and I have a second copy. It could be site A and B running production workloads, sending data to both data centers and vice versa. So they each have a copy, okay? And if one goes down, everything keeps running. So it's not like it's got to be production and DR. No, it can kind of be production, and DR. And that is really, really cool. Now, to be fair, peer persistence does require a quorum witness, which is basically a lightweight virtual machine that distinguishes between link failures and full site outages. It enables automatic failover, ensuring the reliability and minimizing the downtime in the event of an outage. So ideally, this server is best located at a third site. If you have a third site within your environment, great. If you don't, public cloud's a great option for this. So throw it up there in public cloud, whatever your favorite one is. That way, it could see both sites all the time. Or in some situations, if that isn't an option or you can't afford to throw it up in the public cloud, I get it. Putting it at your DR location is acceptable, just not ideal. It's not best case scenario, but it does still work. And that's the recommendation. You would just add that witness to your DR environment. Now, when talking about backup and recovery, it would not be complete unless I mentioned snapshots. Snapshots on the Alletra are called virtual copy. Okay. And basically, they're space efficient point in time backups. But unlike clones, these snapshots use a bitmap based method, consuming storage only when changes occur, which basically means you could take hundreds of snapshots with minimal capacity overhead. Now, another cool feature here when thinking about security, they have a feature called virtual lock, which enforces retention periods. And what I'm talking about is, think of a situation where you may have a storage administrator or somebody accidentally delete a directory. Believe me, it happens. I've seen it happen where someone thought somebody wasn't using it, or they thought, maybe it was named similarly, and boom, they blew it away. Oh my God, what did I just do? If you had virtual lock turned on, you would still have a copy of it. It would not allow you to delete that that information until the retention period expires. So it's a really, really cool feature. And this plays right into ransomware, right? Because what a bad actor typically attempts to do is get into your environment and blow away your backups, because once they do that, they maximize their impact. If you don't have a way to recover, then you have probably no other recourse but either to go without the data or pay the ransom. They got you where they want you. So, but by leveraging these immutable copies, they absolutely, you have protection, okay, which is huge. And virtual lock is all managed through the DSCC, your cloud console, and it does support third-party backup applications. So it does give you some flexibility depending on how you want to manage it. Now, depending on your environment, that may not be enough. Let's be honest. You're taking a point in time of a backup and locking it down for a period of time. Well, if you're doing transactional type data, you may not be able to go back an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours. You may not be able to afford that luxury. Fair enough. In that case, really should look at a product that we have called Zerto. It actually does real-time journaling of your environment down to the second. And what's cool about it is you can almost immediately recover to any point in time. So if there was an instance where you did have someone come in your environment and change data, remove data, destroy data, you could actually basically go to a couple seconds before that actually happened and recover to that point. Now, that's just a brief thing about Zerto. We're actually going to do an episode on that in the future. But if you have that mission critical type workload that you absolutely can't live without, check Zerto out. It's a really, really cool option. Okay, so the last piece I want to talk about today is actually one of my favorite features, and it's a major competitive advantage for Alletra MP. So we all know that AI is the big buzzword right now. Everybody's talking about AI. It's on your phone, Apple Intelligence, OpenAI. Everybody's doing AI, right? I get it. But many people didn't know that HPE has been doing AI for years, and it's been built into their products for a long, long time in a product called InfoSight. So today, AI is now integrated across our entire environment, and it's not just in storage. It's going into our servers and everything, and it's really awesome, and it allows you to do things that you just couldn't do before. So with that being said, you now have the ability to do intent-based provisioning. And what I mean by that is, traditionally storage administrators would have to go in and everything was kind of manual. So you'd have to create your LUNs, you'd have to, manage if you had multiple arrays. You would have to know which hardware is in what workloads work best with, depending on IOPS or whatever your needs were. So you'd have to know a whole lot of information about your environment. And, you'd have to, typically have to be a pretty smart, understanding your infrastructure and everything. So there's a lot that went into being a storage administrator. But now, sorry, storage administrators, we're kind of making that super easy, because we have years and years and years of data understanding workloads and environments, and and everything. We just have all of this data. And so now we're running AI against that, and we're saying, hey, um, how can we simplify this? And it's this simple. So you go into the platform, and all you need to do is specify the workload. So basically identify the application you're running, how much capacity you need, and the host group. That's it. Literally, you pick the application you're running, and it does the rest for you. The system uses the real-time telemetry and the AI to place the data optimally within that workload. And like I said, if you have multiple arrays, let's say you have an all-flash system, maybe you have a spinning disk, maybe you have object. Well, if you have all those different arrays for different workload types, it's going to know that. Once you register them into the system, it's going to know they're available. And so as it's identifying that workload, it's going to say, oh, this is a database. I need this to be, on fast, NVMe type flash. So I'm gonna put it here. And then, maybe this other data, oh, that's an archival type data. So I'm gonna just throw that out to, the spinning disk, or maybe it's something that's going to go out to object. So whatever, it's smart enough to know and pick those different things. So if you have a really large environment that's complex, it's really going to simplify a lot of that for you. So that's awesome. Um, Now, with that intent-based provisioning, it really reduces that operational overhead. It speeds up your application provisioning, and it's aligned with things like, DevOps that want to move real fast, right? And they don't want to have to wait as they're working within their environments. And what you could do is you could leverage role-based access control, which allows, your developers to have access to, a rules-based, portion of your environment where they can provision their own infrastructure, and they don't have to be, PhDs in storage to do it. So there's a lot of flexibility there that makes your life a lot easier than it used to be. Taking it one step further, that's great. We just talked about kind of like what day one looks like, but what about day two? So now it's running. AI picked everything up for us. Everything's provisioned. Okay. Now it's been running for a little while. Now what? Well, that's what's cool. So AI is also looking at your workload management. Okay. And there's in Data Services Cloud Console, there's something called the Data Operations Manager. And that provides like analytics driven tools for troubleshooting and performance optimization. So these features, help your storage administrator spot and fix issues quickly. And because it's going to look at things like, your headroom utilization for your top contributors, and it's going to look at hotspots of latency and latency variations and workload drift and all things like that. So it's going to look for anomalies. And then it's not just going to look for those anomalies and point out, hey, something's wrong. No, it's going to make a recommendation. So it's going to say, hey, here's a remediation for this. I'm seeing this, and here's how you can fix it. Like, oh, that's really cool. Now, it takes it actually even deeper, because in many cases, like a system like this, may have tools, but it only looks at the storage. What's awesome about this, it extends deep into VMware and actually looks straight into the hypervisor. So it also provides recommendations on how the virtual machines are provisioned and how they can be optimized. So, that could be a lifesaver. It's like, hey, maybe I need more space. And it's like, okay, well, this is actually going to tell you, it's going to say, hey, these VMs look good. These VMs over here are way over provisioned. You can recoup, this amount of CPU, this amount of memory, this amount of storage, and once again, it's going to make a recommendation on how to solve for some of that. So it's not just looking at, hey, you're a little, you have some latency over here or there. No, it's going to look at the whole environment, which is awesome. Now, I wish I had this visibility. I used to be an IT director, and I remember specifically an instance where I had an end user from the business office that, they basically messaged the help desk and say, hey, the application that I'm using is super slow. I don't know what's up. It's super slow. It's basically unusable. we send somebody over to look at it. It's working fine. Like, it's got to be end user problem. Day later, they call back and say, hey, it's not working right. I know you were just here yesterday, but I'm telling you, it's not working right. So, now we're like, wow, what is up with this person? Like, I mean, it's got to be them. It's got to be user error. My system, I said, let's look at what's happening on the back end. Everything looks good. Can't see anything. Great. So this goes on for weeks, months. We look at more and more and more stuff. I'm telling you, we can't find where the issue is. Now we start running packet tracer. We start doing all of these things, trying to narrow down, creating new VMs, recreate, moving workloads. Ultimately, we found a misconfiguration in the SAN that was causing all of the problems. But I'm telling you, if we would have had this insight, there would have been no issue. So, this is game changing for storage administrators, because honestly, as an IT leader, when my team can't tell me what's going on, it's absolutely embarrassing, especially when it goes on for weeks and months at a time, and you have no answers. So, the AI integration here is huge, and it's definitely something that is worth taking a look at. So I'm running out of voice. Probably talked enough. So let's wrap things up. Let's do a quick recap. Today we covered deduplication and compression. We talked about replication and peer persistence. We just talked about those AI-driven intent-based provisioning and advanced analytics for managing the environment. We also talked about virtual copy and virtual lock, giving you that data protection and the ransomware resilience. So really, really cool software features. And once again, as new features are developed, you get all of it for free as part of your SaaS license. So really cool stuff. I highly recommend, you reaching out to your HPE rep and taking a deeper dive. So thank you for joining me today. And I want to give you a heads up. In our final episode, I'm going to bring in a solutions architect. His name is Dan Hercules. He's going to give us a live demo of the environment and introduce the GreenLake Cloud Console to you. He's going to give us, a great tour. We'll be able to dive in deep and kind of see firsthand all of these features that I just talked about. And, I think it'll really give you an idea of where HPE is going with the GreenLake Cloud Console and how we're trying to unify everything and really what Alletra MP brings to the table. So until then, please remember to embrace the unknown. It isn't something to fear. It's an opportunity to innovate. I'm Steve Mancini, and I'll see you on the next episode of Thriving in Ambiguity.